All right, welcome back to General and Housing. We are here now for this block of time to talk with Kevin G. Moore Jr., the director of our IT department, the Office of Information Technology. I asked Kevin and Sean to come in, just like with Mike Ferrant earlier this week, is these are services that are provided to us in order for us to help do our job. Keeping the pandemic thank yous in on the front burner. I like to joke with people that in 2019 we still had rotary telephones, and now we have Zoom and YouTube and these systems that are throughout the building, and it wouldn't have happened without Kevin and his staff. And just wanted to thank you for I was laughing last week at microphone training because people were just complaining about the sound, and of course it was terrible, or it was
still is
problematic. But for all of you who will never have the opportunity to pick a microphone up out of the desk or forget to turn it off before you let it go back into the desk, you'll never know how good you have it, even with the crappy sound that we're suffering through until it gets repaired. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for inviting us in. For the record, Kevin Moore, Director of Legislative IT. We'll stay on that topic for just a second. For your information and anybody else who's listening, we have our sound engineers, both from the manufacturer and from the contractors, coming in Wednesday of next week to observe you all in session so they get a clear visual of what's happening and what's not working properly. We'll put together some mitigation plans immediately there, and we'll do the best we can to resolve as much as we can during that time frame. So Wednesday through Friday of next week, they're going to be on site. Should be, I think, 4 total engineers to deal with it. The manufacturer is clearing their shelves right now to try to make sure they have enough equipment, alternate equipment, to swap out microphones, because that's really the crux of our issue in that space. It's a bit of a vicious cycle. Where we have poor sound pickup from the microphone cartridge. And part of that is the cartridge, part of it's the length. So we're looking at adjusting the length of the microphone. We're looking at swapping the cartridges out. We're going to start with our frequent flyer speakers, of course, and work our way down with as much equipment as we have. And then we'll make sure that we get everything adjusted as quickly as possible. But what's happening, generally speaking, in that space is that we're supplementing sound using the big wall-mounted speakers. I'm not sure if everybody's seen them or noticed them. They're pretty well camouflaged.
Between the columns, very nice.
Not everybody's seen them. And surprisingly, it was the people who haven't been here the longest that seem to notice them more than anybody else. And I expected it to be the other way around. But anyway, we worked with Curatorial, we worked with Historical Preservation, we worked with architects, we did all sorts of stuff to try to get it. And we missed the mark clearly on the actual microphone pickup itself. We'll adjust it. The rest is going to work well. Those speakers that are on those base units do work really well, just not currently because we're not picking up enough sound. And so those big overhead speakers are almost feeding back, or today, feeding back, depending on the audio pickup. So those are designed to be off during regular debates. And then the rest of the 90 and 86, it's 93 speakers, I think, in that room will fill the sound, or fill the room with sound. So it works well when it's picking up the right audio. It's not picking it up. We'll get it adjusted correctly. And the good news is that the contract itself is not yet closed out. So we're still hanging on to 25% of that money. And we'll make sure that we continue to do so until we're there. Yes. So we'll get it right. But we are incredibly grateful for the patience of the body as we go through and adjust to this new system. The last one, if you read my note last week, it took 50 years of tuning and it still was not all that great. So we won't take 50 years.
And like 30 of those were the Senate refusing to fund this, but that's
We quick little tidbit. We found a letter that our staff wrote to NCSL in 2003 referencing the antiquated house audio system that was 25 years overdue for replacement in 2003. That's what was in use last year. My staff and I were underneath desks, I kid you not, almost every other day, pulling wires, resoldering, getting things patched back together. We've been buying parts off of eBay for years and we can no longer find them. It was terrible experience. So we inherited it. We'll professionalize it. We'll get it right. And then hopefully it becomes a commodity of the building and we don't have to talk about sound anymore.
Right.
That's the goal.
Noticed the little mini floor wedges in front of the Senate seats. Are those on yet? Are those new?
Mini floor wedges for feet?
No, they're like mini speakers, like across from the Senate seats. They point back to the Senate
Oh,
seats. They're
yes.
like angled floor
They're
wedges.
brand new, yes.
Brand new,
They're part of the
yeah.
93.
They're part of the 93.
And so are those on yet?
They are, but they suffer from the same problem.
Same problem.
As
So
those
they're
ductworks.
part of this package.
They are. Yeah. And so, but with that, you're going to have sound reinforcement in the Senate seats that you've never had before.
Right.
You're going to have sound reinforcement at your desk, which you've never had before.
Right.
That should get rid of the cavernous sound that we're hearing in that space. It should be much more intelligible.
I think the past system, I mean, I could speak, we sit on the east side and, I don't travel around the chamber during session very often, but the kind of sound, never mind the quality, in the past, the kind of, depending on how close to a particular speaker you were and the echo of the building, it's a different experience, when you think about like if you're sitting across the room from me, you're hearing it in a completely, you've been hearing it in a completely different way, which to me is like you're hearing a whole other experience, and it became a multiverse, to use a
Absolutely.
movie term, but it was weird to be sitting in the gallery or sitting in the balcony or sitting in a different place and how you could hear it.
And the same is going to be true going forward. We're trying to balance that, but it's an acoustical nightmare. You have 40+ foot ceilings. You have intricate architecture. You have these hard surfaces that sounds bouncing off. You have a whisper wall in your gallery. You have a couple of spots underneath the chandelier that if you stand, the entire room can hear you at a whisper. It's quite an interesting place to be and prevent feedback. So we rely heavily on these AV engineers for this particular system. And again, we'll get it right with a little bit of time. And we appreciate that.
Probably be handled with a rule change that you don't have to speak from your seat, you speak from the sweet spot.
You could go that route, or the rule
I
change
remember
could even
saying
be,
that.
if you're, believe it or not, if you're sitting and using the system, it works beautifully.
Yes.
As soon as you stand up,
That's what I heard,
the
yeah.
pickup range just isn't quite
And
there.
Ron reported that while we were all sitting there going, "Oh, what?" He said you could hear it in here.
Yeah.
Perfectly fine. It was
Yeah.
picking up.
The in-room sound reinforcement is 100% the problem. 100% the problem. We have a couple balancing issues here and there, but those are easy to correct. It's this in-room reinforcement, and you're getting the bouncing and hearing in multiple spots, and we have multiple delays in there to deal with the acoustics of the space and the challenges we've had in the past. So depending on where the sound's coming, you have some delays intentionally so you don't get bounce, and everything syncs up nicely. But
Do you know
interesting.
if there's a delay on the VPR feed? If I go on my phone and plug in my thing, because it used to be a 5 to 7 second delay.
There is. So there's a couple different options if you're looking for hearing assistance in that space right now. So for those who have plugged into the side of the units, so each of those units sitting at your desk has 2 direct line hearing assistant components. You plug in a regular headphone jack, 3.5 millimeter, 1/8 inch headphone jack. Either earbuds, over the head headset, whatever works for you, you're going to get crystal clear sound. It's crystal clear. It's great. Now, you're going to have a balance issue. So floor mics are still going to be quieter than the handheld wireless microphones or those podium microphones for the short term. But in time, we'll get that balance correct.
The problem that I found is that the volume doesn't go up enough.
And that is that mic pickup. That's precisely what that is. So we can't send enough sound to the core system. You have additional hearing assistant solutions, which it's also new. We're still tuning to make sure that it works well. And so we have a radio frequency device sitting in the back rack that provides a belt pack a feed of line level sound. And so you can go over the head headphones, earbuds, whatever, same plug-in. You can do T-coil for those who have hearing aids that are equipped with T-coil. We have a T-coil neck loop that we can plug into that same belt pack. And then the third option, which is still, again, we're tuning. It works well when it works well, and we're still finding that sweet spot, is a Bluetooth option. Most hearing aids are coming Bluetooth equipped these days. And most people are paired to a personal mobile device. And so we're sending that sound at line level in real time, and millisecond delay or so. It is over a network, of course, to a smart app, so a smartphone app. And that's the Williams Sound Wavecast app. And if you're on our public Wi-Fi, very intentionally on the public network, and you have that app, you can use your personal smart device to listen to the sound anywhere that we have the State House public network. Anywhere, any building.
The public network is different than what we have
Correct.
sole access to.
So the big advantage of the VT-Leg in-house network, which most of you are familiar with, is printer access. We obviously don't provide that access or any kind of other internal resource access via the State House public network. But we're pushing it over the public network because we only have the option to push it to one because we want to make sure it's as widely accessible for anybody that enters the building as possible.
What was the name of that app again?
Williams Sound Wavecast. WAVECAST. And we're developing documentation on it as well. We want to get it tuned up nicely before we go fully live with that documentation. But Delia Gillen, our in-house IT trainer, many of you probably have already met during your orientation process or in other travels, is the one writing up that documentation, and we'll circulate it soon. But in the meantime, if you have issues, we can, again, plug directly into the side of the unit, or we have a variety of other options available. Sounds great.
Is Delia the person we would talk to get software training?
Yes, absolutely. Or me. I'm happy to facilitate as well. If you have one-on-one training needs, we would love to hear about it in one of two ways. Either feel free again to email myself or even Delia, or get us on our help desk. So helpdesk@ledge.state.bt.us, only from your legislative email address. Again, that's very intentional. So we don't want the world spamming our help desk system, of course. And so from your legislative email address, E as in everything or electronic or whatever you want to call it, help desk, all one word. And it should populate. I think it's 3 or 4 characters is necessary before it autofills. But that would be a great way to request training. And if you have something you want to do at a group level or at a committee level, let us know. Happy to come in. Just don't want to take advantage of your time.
Okay, thank you so much. Do you want to?
Absolutely. So our general mission is right behind us. We are a nonpartisan office of the General Assembly. I'd like to refer to us as a full service shop. So we are from the ground up all the way through to the internet edge. Every single device we maintain, we manage, we design, we develop, sometimes in coordination with contractors, but we are standalone IT organization. We are not integrated with the rest of state government. And that's pretty intentional, not only for the separation of powers when you have, the constitutional separation of powers, but we have a fundamentally different focus on our mission. We're not outward facing. Our mission for technology is inward facing. Our clients are in the organization, legislators and staff. We obviously serve the public as well, and that's important. We want to make sure that we take the time to provide high quality information resources to the public. But our primary focus, the priority, are the legislators and then the staff of the General Assembly. So it's just a fundamentally different mission. Design, integration, support, maintenance, very aggressively nonpartisan. But we have a pretty small team. I'll throw some photos up on it in a moment. We have a fairly small team. It's about 8 1/3 FTE year round. And but we require our team members to wear multiple hats. And what we mean by that is that they're specialists in one particular area. So for example, Sean Allen in the back is our dedicated systems administrator. He takes care of the primarily the server architecture to make sure that it's always up and available and well maintained. Then we have other folks, network engineering, development, user support, what have you. But at the end of the day, we're all customer focused based. So if we need to, Sean will come down, I'll come down, we'll provide help desk support. We'll do whatever we need to during the legislative session to make sure that technology is no longer a barrier to the committee process. It cannot be a barrier to the committee process. And we measure our success in minutes and moments, not through a traditional IT organization where it could be a few hours, maybe a week, right, before you hear back from that help desk request that you have, that technology request. We want to make sure that we're here for you and the staff as quickly as possible. If you talk to Ron at some point, I'm sure he'll let you know that we're pretty responsive. right? We could always be a little bit more responsive, but we're pretty quick and we take some great pride in that. We have some metrics I'll show you a little bit later on as well. But now we have a quick view of our staff. You'll notice at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, we have a vacancy. We're into the second year of our vacancy. This is our session-only user support specialist position, typically located in the lounge. So for those of you who were here pre-pandemic, you'll remember we had somebody in the lounge dedicated to legislators and their support requests. And then they would move on and backfill other locations if the legislators were okay in that space or they had, I'm not going to call it free time. They weren't busy, directly busy with legislators. So if you know anybody, send them our way. The application process is still open. We don't really need somebody with a huge depth of technology knowledge. We can teach that part, but they have to be great with customer service, have great interpersonal skills, willing to show up to an office and wear a shirt and tie.
$7.25 an hour?
What's that?
$7.25 an hour?
No, we're actually in the low 20s, mid 20s. We just went through a salary study a little while ago. I'm sure most of you folks are aware to right size the organization as a whole to make sure we're compensating folks properly. So it's a competitive salary, and there is indeed a range associated with it. But if you know somebody, send them our way. That'd be great. Otherwise, you'll see myself up there, then Duncan Goss. Duncan Goss ran the IT department before I was here, and for a little while I was here. He's been here since the late 80s. Somewhere in that range, 30 plus years, and was at one point one of the sole, if not one of two, IT people in the organization. He still remains with us. His role at this point is business management and systems analyst. So very busy. You'll see Sean as well, systems administrator, been with us 2018? 17. Yeah. January though. January 2017. Ryan Torres, November of 2018. He's been with us since then, but he's actually been with us much longer than that in a contractor role. And so he was one of the first architects of the second generation Wi-Fi network in this building. And so we saw an opportunity to acquire his talent. And not only is he a competent network engineer, but he's a security focused and dedicated security administrator for us now. Our first direct hire dedicated to cybersecurity in the organization. Does a phenomenal job. Shadi Baton. Almost everybody's seen him. You see him running. He's everywhere. He's our dedicated user support specialist. That is his role, customer service. In the off session, you'll see him underneath tables, reconfiguring systems, heavily into inventory. He checks all the asset tags on the back of everything. He knows where everything is almost at all times to include the very minute details of cables and dongles and mice and you name it. He can tell you where it is. But it's an important role. Delia Gillen, primarily a trainer, but also a user support specialist. It's about a 50-50 split. She came on in January of 2020. We were super excited in January of 2020 to start the development of our in-house training program. It's something that we desperately needed for the last several years. And we identified the ability to hire somebody, fill that need, and then March of 2020 hit, and we completely shifted her role. And now we're getting back into that space. So in 23, 3 years late, we're starting to truly develop that IT training program, and we'll soon be putting out a schedule of webinars and various other technology classes that we can host in our new classroom space that we put over at 133 State Street. It was not a $0 build, but we did it mostly with surplus equipment, folding tables and available stuff that was around. So it was a very inexpensive build.
That sounds so legislative. It usually takes us 5 years to pass a bill, so.
So it fits right in.
Yeah.
You know, we were hoping to hang on to Delia during that time frame, knowing that she came from a public library. Really wanted to get deep into the teaching weeds. And she comes with she'll correct me if I'm wrong, she's not here today, so she can't correct me now, a master's degree in instructional technology. She is very, very good at what she does when it comes to teaching technology. Tony Morris, we would call him our copy room technician. He is so much more than that to our organization. He is also one of our help desk folks if necessary, but he has about 30 years of commercial print experience. And so he brings that experience with him to what we call our copy room, which is inadequate to what that space does. It's really a print shop now. And he can bind books, he can do your business cards, he can take care of notepads. You let us know what you need. Chances are he's already got a process in place to do that. He's very, very prideful in the work that he provides. So we brought a lot of resources back in-house. The fiscal facts books, if you receive those were done here. A lot of those print products are done here now, rather than out-house, so we're saving money, which is great. And the turnaround time is significantly better. And then we have Adam Wood. Adam Wood came to us last year as our first dedicated web developer. And so we call him a web developer, but he's really a web application developer. So if you've been paying attention to technology, which is dry and boring over the last handful of years, you'll notice a lot of applications are starting to be web-based now through a web browser. And that's not a mistake. That's very intentional. You get away from dedicated computer architecture at that point, and you just support browsers. It makes it so much more accessible to people. And so he is in charge of maintaining the bulk of the General Assembly website and the JFL website at this point. Not the content, but the underlying, the architectures, and then he works with the rest of our team to make sure that the infrastructure is ready to go. He's in the process right now of working through the feedback we received from our next generation website project this past summer. And what we found through that process is that it's a pretty good site, but just like anything else, it could stand to use some improvements, but they're not massive. It's not a design-based issue. It seems like the design is fairly good with some tweaks. It's a little bit more information here, a little more there, a little design tweak here, and then of course the underlying architecture. So we're excited to see that project kick off. But we have a very diverse and talented IT staff, and we all work very deeply and collaboratively together, and you'll see us all run around with our heads cut off this time of year because of the heavy transaction load. But believe it or not, our busy season is the off session. We do the bulk of our work and the bulk of the changes to the organization during the interim. And so the last week of December, we were running, we were sweating, we were trying to finish the last connections of this and that. It was quite the experience. And then people outside of IT come in January, and that's their busy season, and we're here to support you. This first week of real testimony is always a little bit crazy. Everybody's getting used to the things that are in place, the little tweaks that are here and there, but we're already seeing it. It's starting to settle a little bit. People are getting the flow of things, and it'll be good, I think, either in the next week or two, with the exception of the house sound. We'll get there. Any questions at this point? So,
No.
brief performance metrics, they're a bit dated. I haven't had a chance to update them yet. But again, we take pride in the quality of our support, the timeliness of our support. And this is direct feedback from our clients, from anybody who chose to take the time to submit a survey result. And this is a year's worth of data. So it's not over 3 years or 5 years. We do have that data. We could certainly aggregate it at some point. But you see that we have a high bar. We have a high bar, and we try to maintain that. So timeliness is our lowest metric. You'll see that's at just shy of 93% of success rate. This is, oh goodness, I want to say it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 800 responses. Technical knowledge, right? If we don't know what we're talking about, we can't help you very well. So that's important. And it's from your perspective. Do we have the knowledge necessary in order to take care of what you need? Communication skills. Right? Finding an IT person who communicates effectively is quite the challenge at times. We understand that. We get that. But we take pride in being able to communicate effectively in a moment of crisis at times, or in a moment of education. We want to make sure we're communicating effectively, and so far it feels like we're hitting that mark. You let us know if we're not, though. Professionalism, ability to solve the problem. Again, at the end of the day, despite anything else, if we can't solve your problem and get you back up to where you need to be, we're not doing our jobs as well as we could. Any questions at this point? I know that we have some individual tech needs, and we can take care of those. Sean is able to run around and take care of those while we're fielding other questions if you want, or we can wait and do it individually, or you can always come see us.
Well, I just, I'm gonna mirror what I said to Sue Minter earlier from Capstone to you as well. This building went from essentially a rotary telephone technology to what we have now, and we expect it to work seamlessly. And so I just really, having experienced the turnover, and especially what you had to do starting March 13th, 2020, it's pretty remarkable. It's a pretty remarkable change in this building about how we interact with each other, with the world with our work. So for your what did you say, 8 1/3?
8 1/3 FTE.
It's a third person. It's at 1/3 of a person. But,
A third of the year we have.
the remnants of somebody who is overworked. But thank you for what you've been able to do and make it. It's. I know that you could probably look around in each room and figure out where the faults are.
Every single time we walk through the space.
I like that you just said for our needs and for what we expect, because we're not. We have very peculiar personal needs, and for me, it's like, why can't I follow directions is really, the equivalent of. So thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. It was quite the adventure. We transitioned. So the House took a week break in March of 2020. House took a week break. The Senate did not. The Senate continued operating. And it was 6 legislative business days. And that number sticks with us. Before we had that transition in place from a largely analog paper-driven organization to a primarily digital organization. And it was a huge lift, not just by IT, but all offices of the General Assembly. And with the collaboration at that point was remarkable. It was nothing less than remarkable to make sure that we could make the institution functional. Well, 180 legislators were in their own home office, whatever that looked like for you, using some hodgepodge of devices, whether it was ours or yours or a mixture thereof, and it worked. Was it perfect? Absolutely not.
Oh, it is unconstitutional.
Well, I'm not the lawyer in the room.
It's not his department, right?
Not my department, but it worked. And that was something that we were incredibly impressed by. And in the early days of the pandemic, we were one of 4 states in total that were operational. 2 of those states already had full telecommunication capabilities prior to the start of the pandemic. So in working through NCSL, our subgroup of Nail It, we went through and we actually helped other states find a way to get from A to B. And we did so quite successfully. And at one point, we consulted for the U.S. Senate before they went. So it's been an interesting ride, lots of interesting phone calls, and some great collaboration.
Representative Burrows.
I just wondered whether you had any idea or any plans whatsoever, or did it just come out of nowhere like a giant wave?
As far as a written pandemic plan?
No, but getting everything.
Was this really your wish?
It's funny. We have always looked at video conference as a tool that we could have made better use of. But there was a more or less unwritten prohibition of doing that type of business in the Vermont State House. And it's because of our values. Our values are quite clear. We're a roundtable organization. We're sitting here around a table. We typically reached across, shook hands. And if you wanted to talk to your representative or your senator, you come here and you do it. You sit down and you have that conversation. And so pre-pandemic, it felt a bit impersonal to have a video call or a conference phone to bring a witness in. It's just not the same quality of conversation, not the same dialogue. So it just wasn't used. And like I said, we would fly people here at expense instead. And there are some pros and cons there. You get them in person, but there's some added expense. If you look at your average Vermont-based witness, if they're traveling from Bennington and they come up here, they have to take a day off from work, find parking. Good luck with that in Montpelier pre-pandemic. And you got to make sure that you got enough money in the meter. You're standing in the hall, you're reading a paper copy of an agenda, and you're saying, I have no idea where we are. And then you find out that you're an hour and a half behind schedule, which happens. And we bumped you to tomorrow. Can you come back? Now I'm taking a second day of work off. I'm traveling again, finding parking, rinse and repeat. But what we can do now is they just sit in their office. They take a half-hour break. They testify for 15 minutes at your convenience, right? Even if they bump their schedule. And it just works so much more effectively to bring these folks in a timely manner without having to interrupt their entire life. So we've seen that as a tool for a long time. But to be frank, the industry was premature. They didn't have the tools in place pre-pandemic. If we hit this COVID-19 pandemic 3 or 4 years prior to when we did, I don't think the world would have adapted nearly as well as it did. Zoom wasn't even ready. Zoom wasn't ready. Teams wasn't ready, right? WebEx, whatever your flavor of video conference was, they just weren't ready. and they were all rapidly scaling to make it work. Zoom's been a phenomenal partner with us along the way. And it was the right tool at the right time and continues to be a great technology for us. So did we see it? Not quite, but we were prepared with options should we get to that point.
It was, go ahead.
Go ahead,
No, no, you-
finish your statement.
Okay, I'll go.
I was like, finish your statement, and then I'll ask.
Again, just the reaction, much like Tropical Storm Irene, where everybody, there were things that we did that were right and wrong, but we responded.
Yes,
And so that's.
we had a response.
Right.
Yeah, and
Go ahead, Representative Lomano is.
Thank you. No worries. No. So mine is just because you seem to know of resources and I feel a little bit obnoxious for asking the same question over and over again. So is there an app? So like similarly how there's this app for the Williams Sound thing, right? Is there an app where we could get the closed captioning? It doesn't work on Zoom. But the expense, I don't want the, like, there's no need for that expense. I just feel like there's gotta be another way, there's gotta be an alternative.
so for live transcription services, that's a very tricky one. And so we've gone round and round with that. I will note, I've done it on the record a couple times, using Zoom live transcription services was never our recommendation because
Right.
while it's 85% accurate, it's 15% inaccurate. And that's a problem. So as far as an AI powered live transcription service, they do exist. The best that I have seen, and it's not inexpensive, the cost of $1 to $3 per minute, depending on the technology, per minute. And usually there's a significant upfront cost for hardware, is about 97% accurate. Still 3% inaccurate. You're still gonna have inaccuracies. What we've really recommended is those who need it. We have available CART services by contract. So it's a communication access real-time translation, CART, C-A-R-T. And that's an ADA response. And so if somebody has a need for that, we have an online form at the bottom right-hand corner of our website. You can click that, fill it out. We ask for some information, we can schedule in advance. Aside from that, the AI is improving. Google has some services out there that they're putting out for free. There's various apps that are out there that are putting it out for free. We can recommend one or two to try. We just can't guarantee their accuracy.
Yeah.
And so if that's something you would like to explore, shoot me an email.
Okay.
And we'll chat about it.
Thank you.
All right, I want to leave you enough time to work with individuals who need it. But I thank you for coming in and sharing. It's always good to put a 3D 50% face, but
I read the room and I wanted to make sure that I was respectful of the space and I know we're all suffering from some colds and we're waiting on an HVAC replacement. And
yeah,
I don't want to add to the petri dish effect more than I already do.
it's all pretty amazing for a state that didn't have electricity and 100% of it stayed until 1972. But anyway, so thank you very much. Please feel free. We can go off live, Ron, but just feel free to
Thank you
if
so
have
much.
questions.
Thank you.
Sean, please